Hey, I'm Nicholas Prom, and you're watching Posers Must Die. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, artist Mark Devito. And if you have seen the documentary Murder in the Front Row, you may recognize him. And if you've gone to a heavy metal concert uh, in the last 20 years, you've probably seen his art on a t-shirt, on a flyer, on the backdrop, or the scrims of the bands that are playing. Mark's a very busy guy. He's done a lot of terrific art for Exodus, Testament, uh, Motorhead, The Stones, and I'm sure plenty others that
Metallica.
I'm forgetting. Metallica, yeah, a little band called Metallica,
Small bit.
a little bit. And Mark is a Portland resident, so we live in the same city. That's great. But you grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're definitely going to talk about that. Uh, but Mark, why don't we get started? Just talk about like your origins as an artist. Where did it begin
Okay.
for you?
Well, I mean, essentially, I grew up in the Bay Area. My family had moved from Atlanta, Georgia, back in 70, 71. And so I was kind of a transplant from the South. So I kind of got into the school system a little on shakier ground than the other kids. Everybody knew each other, and I was kind of coming in from nowhere. But I found essentially my tribe in about my 10 or 12. I started going down to the record stores and picking up and then I would see other kids that were buying, the Kiss records or Hawkwind or stuff
Oh,
like
wow.
that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we started kind of just, touching base and figuring out, who listened to what at an early age. um, anyway, and then it was really high school where everything kind of blew up. I used to uh, get the records and I would bring them home and I would, scrawl the logo of ACDC or Black Sabbath on first on the wall of my bedroom. My mother kind of fostered
Oh,
that artistic side of me that needed a blank canvas that was pretty big. So anyway, and I got fairly good at it, and then I moved from that to my jacket. I used to get these army jackets. I was
oh,
befriended by some older punk people that went to the school, and they told me about an army surplus store and get the $3 army jackets. And I would draw on the back of the army jackets. I'd draw Led Zeppelin or Aerosmith or
oh,
ACDC, and go to school wearing them. And people would ask me where I got that. I told them I could do it for them, and I
oh.
it became a little cottage industry for me at about 13, 14 years of age.
That's
I was
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. And then it became a calling card. I started going to concerts and people would see the jacket. I used to hang out at the park across the street from the school, and all the older kids with their bands would come around, hand out their flyers to all these kids hanging out in the park, and they'd see my jacket. And the next thing I know is, get a conversation going, and I'm drawing a flyer. Uh, and then it evolved into, doing a backdrop or some sort of
Oh man.
stage
Oh
illustration,
man.
and on a mushroomed. And at the time, we're talking about a lot of bands that now, are on the, international stage.
Yeah.
I mean, you had bands like Laws Rocket,
Yeah.
Legacy. There was a band, The Ruffians,
Oh sure.
Diamond, and the the network was fairly small, where if one band saw, hey, where did you get your backdrop done, there's like
Ah,
two people that did those, and I would say yes to every job whether I knew how to do it or not.
there you go. Figure it out, right?
Figure it out, fake it till you make it.
Love
And
it.
that's how I got into early trouble with Legacy. I had
Oh,
done some flyers for them, and then they decided they wanted a backdrop.
okay.
So I was like, yeah, I could do that. I'm figuring it's the same thing as drawing or painting on a jacket, just larger. So I went and got like a black bed sheet and moved my mom's furniture to the outer perimeter of her hardwood floor living room, laid out this black bed sheet. And they said, hey, we wanted a big silver pentagram and then the logo on top of it and above it. But the pentagram needs to be silver. So when we hit the lights, we're going to hit it with a single spot. And this
Oh,
a pentagram would just appear and kind of shimmer.
oh,
So
cool.
I used a different kind of paint than I was used to for the
Uh-huh.
pentagram. And
Uh-huh.
anyway, Alex Skolnick and who I was going to high school with at the time, and Eric Peterson came over to my
Mm.
mom's to pick it up. And as we're gonna fold up the backdrop, we're noticing it's stuck to the floor. And sure enough, the silver paint had soaked right through the bed sheet. And
Oh.
and we finally got it up, and it revealed that I had now this 6 foot round pentagram on my mom's living room floor. Uh, and they took off as soon as they got the backdrop. They were like, I'm not sticking around for this. They took off. My mom shows up, and I'm trying to scrub it out of the floor on my hands and knees, and she's swearing up and down that I'm like, doing satanic rituals when she's out doing shopping
Oh
or something.
no.
So I lost some of her confidence in my my
Oh,
abilities to. And I said, I swore up and down. I was like, no, it's a backdrop for this band. And she's like, I don't see a backdrop. All I see is a 6 foot pentagram in my floor. So
oh man.
uh, but
Oh,
anyway, that those were some of the foibles that it happens. But the backdrop came out fine, and they
oh
loved it.
good. Oh good.
Yeah. So anyway, but that seemed to be. It was hard to call it a career opportunity. It was like, if as long as I could do this for a little while longer without pissing off too many people, including my parents, then I figured it gets me into a couple shows, and I'd had some fun with it. But
Well, there you go. That's a great attitude to bring to anything. Do it because you love it, and if you get to
oh
make a living, even better, you know.
oh yeah, and I still to this day, I mean, that you get the butterflies in your stomach where it wasn't anybody running. Metallica was not running around at that time where you would think, it's like I was not waiting by the phone to get a call from Judas Priest or,
Right.
or Black Sabbath. We're going to, hey, we heard you did the Legacy backdrop. Sorry about your mom's floor, but we'd like you to, that was never going to happen. So it was friends that were like, oh, I have a band. We're called, Satanic Underpants or whatever it is. So you would do whatever you want because somebody wanted something I could do, and it
Yeah.
it became like it just became exponentially. It just got cooler and funner, and then it was
Ah,
like and nobody, least of all me, could see that we're somehow something else was brewing in the Bay Area that was going to rise up to
oh
this
man.
level. And there's a lot of my friends that I grew up with. We sit around and we'll talk about these things. And if somebody from another period of time or whatever, or somebody that wasn't there hears this, you can't be asked about it without feeling like you're name dropping. Like I would
Oh, sure.
literally look over my shoulder thinking that Paul was still alive and would probably squarely knock me out for even saying some of the names of the bands. It's like, you're quit posing, man. Or so what you work for Metallica? Who gives a and you're like, oh
Oh man.
yeah, of course. No, I'm happy. I was stoked. But
Sure.
that's the way it was growing up in the Bay Area.
Oh man.
There was no uh what is it called? No pretentiousness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
if
you
you
guys are just doing it. Yeah.
that's where the name of your show comes from, because it was like we were deathly protective at the same time as like just very welcoming.
Yeah.
You came to try to start something or to outdress people or whatever. You weren't there for the music.
Yeah.
There were vanguards of the, like you mentioned earlier, Toby Rage, Paul Bailoff. These guys would just, I mean, it was a little brutal, but he, the guardrails were put up, and these
Yeah.
guys, yeah, and
Yeah.
everything from like the Slay team, those guys.
Sure, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't like one, I kind of chose the name of this program ironically because I'm not like spending my time calling out posers. That's kind of negative.
No, no, but
But there's a difference between like having these guardrails, keeping out people who are just there to be seen and and not gatekeeping keeping people out who want to be there genuinely. You know what I mean?
yeah, and we
Not
kind
putting
of
some
learned that. Sorry, we kind of learned that from the punks earlier on, because what happened in the punk scene was, what as soon as it was really starting to blossom in the, like, San Francisco and Oakland, we used to the frat boys got wind of it, where they could go down there and just beat the living crap out of kids that were just trying to slam dance and have fun, but it was like
yeah.
almost like an excuse for violence.
Yeah.
And it I mean, it became an issue. It didn't kill the scene, but it became an issue. And I think we kind of learned, because the punks and the metalheads, we were all cut. That's kind of where thrash and obviously crossover comes. But
Yeah.
thrash was kind of that introduction to that. In the Bay Area, at least, the punks and the metalheads all knew each other. And there was like maybe four guys in the middle of the whole venue that had a Motorhead back patch. And those guys were like, that's Switzerland, they everybody loves those guys, and they respect
Yeah.
the hell out of Lemmy. So,
Yeah.
that was that. But we learned a lot from each other, and we learned the punk and the flyers from the punks,
Yeah.
and before that, I'm sure they learned that from the hippies who would do the
Sure.
telephone pole. So, I mean, Bay Area has a lot of different
Yeah.
cultures and all these different
Yeah.
scenes that had bubbled up,
Yeah.
and if you were paying enough attention, you would learn from other things. And that's kind of how
Yeah.
we fumbled through our little scene. We figured out, like, production.
Oh
There was
man.
always, like, the Laws Rocket manager, he would bring pyrotechnics, and he would call them pyrotechnics, but they were like a coffee can filled to the rim with like gunpowder
Jesus.
t-shirt. I mean, it sometimes you go, he's like, no, I consulted people for this, and it's like, it's still in a coffee can, and I know
Yeah.
that's gunpowder. So, I mean, and fog machines,
Oh man.
lights, and all this stuff, they would haul this stuff in, and it's like, these days, I mean, clubs would be burning down if they
Oh
put
my
that stuff
gosh.
in there. So it was exciting.
Wow. Wow. Uh so oh my gosh, where do I okay, then uh before we get way deep in the weeds, if somebody wants to hit you up for flyers, t-shirt design, backdrop stuff, where can they get that from you? Where can they contact you for that?
Oh, you can hit me up on my email, which is probably the easiest, as mark@metalbabies.com, METALBABIES. I have a website that's kind of like a portfolio site. It's DI, and I apologize for the URL, but it's hard to find cool URLs anymore. So
Okay.
DIYrockworld.com.
Okay.
Do it yourself rockworld.com.
Dig it.
And that's probably the best way to reach out to me, or email. But
Okay.
I'm very fairly accessible. I mean,
Okay.
I am busy, which is great, and I'm making
Yeah.
money, but as I already stated before, I have a hard time saying no to jobs. So
Sure. Like, hey, somebody wants to give me money? Okay, right?
I'll take it. Yeah, we'll
Pretty
work
good.
we'll work something out, but I'll do my best to, if the styles of what I do appease, then we got something going. But yeah, I still do it to this day. I mean, I just finished all stage set for Exodus, along
Oh,
with
that's
some
awesome.
tour shirts. I did their
Nice.
their live in '89 album
Oh,
cover
yes.
and the packaging for that.
Nice.
And I just did they have on it's on iTunes only, but they do a cover of Beating Around the Bush,
Yes.
AC/DC, and I did that artwork for that. Uh, and I like we were talking earlier, I do work for Forbidden from time to time.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're getting ready to probably start putting out some music. So
Nice.
we're
Nice.
talking more merch
Yeah.
and more album covers, hopefully.
Yeah.
Uh, but
I
yeah,
saw I saw that you've just done an album cover art for Coven, who've got an archival release coming out. That's exciting. They're
yeah,
Northwest Legends. They are a fantastic band.
yeah.
Uh,
And they'll be on Northwest Metalworks. So that'll be pretty cool.
oh yeah.
At least for that release, it's being released by James and Northwest Metalworks.
Oh yes, we're right on James Beach, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Um,
who I
right.
was fortunate enough to meet, locally.
Right on. Yeah, I don't know James, but didn't he write? He wrote this incredible book of like the history of Northwest metal. It's exhaustive. It's like
Yeah,
it's huge.
it's a massive volume. It's
Yeah.
just wonderful. But yeah, it's a
Yeah, but that's something I need to get for reference because I love digging up stuff from from around here too.
sure.
But when you work, do you start on paper or canvas, or are you all digital now? What is the medium do you kind of work in with?
Traditionally, I mean, I'll start off with just paper and
Yeah,
pencil. I'll sketch out unless I have a clear understanding of what they're doing. It depends on the client too. Some people want Photoshop work. I tend to, for most of my work, I'll draw it, sketch it out, get it to where they get the understanding of which way I'm going. Then I'll ink it in, and then I bring it in digitally, and I'll colorize, manipulate, expand it. It all depends. I mean, these days with the technology of the computer, you can really, you know, you can make it so that it can be applied to any medium or any kind of, how they're gonna reproduce it.
oh,
So it's
I
like
got
if
you.
I draw it like this big and scan it in this big, and they go, "Hey, we're gonna do a poster over in Europe of this." It's gonna be like that's gonna be one blurry poster.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like Iron Maiden's Killers was done on a 12-inch by 12-inch, little canvas originally. So I mean, and that was it. So,
Yeah.
the backdrop was probably not going to happen unless somebody hand painted it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
so anyway, those kind of things. And these days, yeah, I've learned my lesson as far as how to marry the two. I try to do everything by hand. I'll draw it, illustrate it, but there's a lot of times that, depending on what the client wants, you got to change something or move this or make this
Sure.
smaller. So it's a
Yeah.
lot easier than redrawing the whole thing. That's why I start with a sketch, because that's in my head is like, you're committing to this is the layout. And it's like,
Right.
but musicians and bands and artists, you know, minds change. And especially if
Sure.
it's designed by committee, that can be, a
Sure.
challenge. So I try to
Yeah.
give myself enough wiggle room that it's like,
Sure.
I can make that happen. I can make that
Yeah.
happen. So,
I imagine it's a lot like that carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once kind of deal. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And these times, yeah, unfortunately, you'll have to cut several times, and then you try to figure out if you can piece it all back together. But yeah, anyway, it's always been a fun process, and there's
Yeah.
nothing, you know. I've continued that idea that I really, I don't have any formal training, and it shows in a lot of my stuff. But it also kind of keeps it. I still get the butterflies, so every time I'm drawing something, it doesn't matter who it's for. It's not the band that I'm working for. It's the doing the work to the
Yeah.
best of that I can do it. And
Sure.
I've battled what is it? It's called oh God,
Imposter syndrome?
imposter imposter syndrome. Yeah, and I've to this day I still have that. It's really
Oh,
it's funny. I mean, but it keeps me, pointed, it keeps me focused on the work, which
Yeah.
is that I don't care who it's for. You know, sometimes I'm like when I was working for Motorhead, it was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm working for Motorhead.
Right.
And Lemmy will call you at 3 in the morning saying,
Whoa.
"Boy, you got to change that, or this doesn't look right, or move this over here."
Oh man.
So, but and that's a whole different animal. But everybody
Yeah.
else, it's like I want it to be as best as it possibly can because they're gonna. If I put my name on it, I want to make sure I've done the best I can. So
Right.
you
But
still get I get that tense thing in the
sure.
gut.
But I mean, that's kind of got to be a kind of a neat exchange, though. Like that. There's that feeling, but also Lemmy just called me at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's kind of incredible. I mean, if you got to be woke up that early, I,
Oh, and you know it's him because nobody else is going to be up and angry about something at 3 a.m. except Lemmy. And in fact, when he died, this I had a conversation with Stefan Shirazi, who is Lemmy's personal guy, but he works with Metallica. He used to write for Kerrang and Sounds.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
longtime journalist, great guy, and he was the creative director between me and Lemmy, and for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So when Lem died, we all felt like we had just been on this train, and all of a sudden, the wheels stopped, but the train slid off and just is. You have
Oh,
the feeling of this forward momentum. Always was what's next. What is
sure.
because Lemmy he's either in the studio or he's sitting on a bar stool writing the next album or he's on tour. And that's what it was. I mean,
Sure.
I crammed, you know, I would say a lifetime of work in 9 years with those guys because
Wow.
Lemmy took a shine to me, and after Joe Patagno was
Oh,
they
right.
stopped using Joe, I had done some work for them at a merch company, designing some merch, and they weren't making any money in retail because they're
Oh,
one of the biggest bootleg bands on the planet at this time,
oh,
back in
yeah.
2008. And this was before the movie came out. So they
Right.
were just like, they go on tour. That's where they would sell them. So all the development was into touring,
Yeah.
and very little was done for retail. And I was like, I was a huge fan. So it was like working for this company. I was like, we got to get them in retail. We got to, the reason why they're bootleg so much is because nobody could find the shirts in retail.
Right.
And it was it's a catch 22 kind of cycle. But
Sure.
so I just spent a couple, weekends of just designing stuff, and I submitted it, and they finally took a chance on it in Europe and did a test on this shirt, and it did great.
Oh, excellent.
The next thing I know, they were like, "Well, you started this." So it's like, let's get some more designs, and we filtered and they called. They've
Oh,
they were they were confused about this royalty check that had spiked since I had been doing stuff for them. And not to fluff my own pillow, but it was like we were paying attention to a band that needed attention, and it was like
yeah.
they were starting to see the results financially, and they thought
All
it was a
right.
mistake, which was great. And so my name got thrown to them graciously by my boss. He's like, this kid is like all about you guys. So, kid, whatever. I was 40 or whatever. Uh, but anyway,
It's all relative, right?
it's all right. I'm still up here. I'm 14 always.
Same.
Yeah. So that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, yeah, long story short, I mean, once I got on that, it was like, well, we need a backdrop. Well, we need a stage, we need a drum riser. We need tour laminates. We need drum heads. We need well, now you can do the graphics on Mickey D's drums, and
Oh, wow.
talk about saying, I think I can do that. I was like, send me the templates. Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
but we did it, and it
Oh,
came out, and he was stoked, and I was stoked, and anyway, but it literally, the phone and the emails nonstop for 9 years, and then
oh,
all of a sudden, just the
oh,
guillotine just
oh.
seemingly came down, and you're like,
Yeah,
"What's next?" And Stefan and I were talking about it. It was like, "What's next?" I mean, that there's there's nothing, because
sure.
Lemmy's not around to approve or give us crap for even suggesting something or
Right.
any of it. And it was just, God, it, it was surreal. I
Oh
mean,
man.
working for them was beyond surreal, but that to somebody to say that, God is dead, I mean, it's
Right?
the end of all things. It was going to be Lemmy, Ozzy, and the Cockroaches. That's it.
Right?
And wait a minute, now it's just Ozzy and the Cockroaches?
Yeah.
I'm not. I had my money on somebody else. It wasn't Ozzy. But
Yeah, yeah. That's
so what do
wild.
you do?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that being that that was such a high profile gig that it perhaps opened some other doors for some avenues for other
Yeah, but it's yeah. I mean, again, same with, like, I mean, before that was Metallica, and
sure.
which definitely I would say opened doors.
Yeah,
And I kind of got to the point after Motorhead that it was like, it, there's nowhere else to go, but not, there's very few of my heroes left.
sure.
There are some, but after working for Lemmy, it's like, you could put a pin in me, I'm done.
Sure.
It's like that was all. I mean, and he was really the one that, and Metallica was like that too. Was where I could say that the butterflies in the stomach were as much for doing the work as much as it was for wanting to uh, please the people that were I I looked up to,
Sure.
respected and admired their
Yeah,
work, and made such an indelible print. And then you start thinking about, like, well, ACDC, man, that would
sure.
be awesome to work for
Sure.
ACDC. And the older we get and the older they get, some of those windows close. And
Yeah.
like I said before, I work for Lemmy. I'm good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
for one. But I still love doing work, and I love the whole idea. The smaller the band, or the band that really is trying to do something different, or uh, wanting to take a different look at how they've done merch in the past, or try some new things. They're a lot more open to it than some of these people that are like, I've been doing it the same way for 50 years, and I'm going to keep
Yeah.
doing it. And that's great. You
Sure.
do you, because I can't be involved in everything. It wouldn't
Sure.
look good. It would be the wrong mix. But
Sure.
like, where we met was at that Wasp show, and
Yeah.
I had just been recommended to Blackie from this marketing guy that I
Okay.
had worked with about 15 years prior for Guns N' Roses guitarist Bumblefoot. He
Oh,
was
right.
solo projects. Anyway, and I had done some work with him, and it was fairly successful. It was fun, and it was a good
Yeah.
thing. But then that was 15 years ago, and then and again, it was jobs come and go, and I get little things
Sure.
here there. Try not to burn any bridges, or bug
Smart.
people like, hey, you haven't called me in a week.
Right.
How are you? It's like
Yeah.
something always comes up, and sure
Sure.
enough, 15 years later, I get this email. Would you be interested in working with Blackie Lawless? I know we haven't talked in a while, but he's looking to go out on tour.
Yeah.
And I emailed back, yeah, sure. Give him, here's my details. If you want to call me, and we'll discuss what he wants. And then, I didn't hear anything for like a week. And then all of a sudden, one day I get a phone call, and it's Blackie Lawless is asking.
Whoa.
He's like, so you do t-shirts? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, who have you done work for? And we talk. And
Yeah.
then he was asking questions, and I started asking. Next thing we know, he used to work in a print house doing those old posters. Sorry, my dog just
That's
walked
okay. Hello,
in.
we can your dog can be a guest as well. That's fine.
She doesn't have very much to say,
Well,
unfortunately.
that's
She's
okay.
petty.
That's all right.
Anyway, but yes. So he worked doing these posters, and I said, "Oh, like the old rock posters?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, I had a Kiss bicentennial, with like the drum and
Oh
fire.
yeah, I remember
I
that
had
one.
that poster on my wall, back
Yeah.
in 76, 77." And he goes, "That was the first poster I printed." Anyway, we hit it off,
Oh, that's
and he
great.
said, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And then I designed all the merchandise.
Oh, that's great.
Um, he goes, "I need help with a backdrop." I did the backdrop.
That was a great
Uh,
backdrop. I was
Thanks.
there.
Oh yeah, I was there too.
Yeah.
And and then yeah, and I did some poster ads for him,
Yeah.
and he's been great. I mean, I haven't
Oh,
heard from him since after that Portland show.
sure.
He did $22 a head the night before, and that's really, as he said, he hasn't seen numbers like that for a long time for merch.
Nice.
So, we hit a home run working together. And
Right
that's what
on.
I love more than anything. It's not the celebrity or that, it's the
Sure.
working together and figuring out, what his ideas are, what my ideas are, meeting in the middle, trying things and being malleable
Yeah.
on both of our sides to
Sure.
get to the better end. And the results being a positive is that I call, that's a win. So
I would say so, yeah. I mean,
sorry,
and that's
sorry.
oh, you're
My
good.
dog.
It's
All
okay.
right. She means well, but
It's okay. It's all right. They're our
she's
best
an old
friends.
goth from I don't know when.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I tease because she's black. She's got a black
Oh,
coat, so it's like
oh, okay.
goth.
Oh, yes. Well, give my regards to Susie Sue.
Yes.
Uh, so I did want to touch on you have a successful line of like baby jumpers, rompers,
Yeah.
metal babies, and this is licensed apparel, with kind of like references to like lots of metal bands and their songs and album covers.
Yeah.
What was the genesis of that, and how did you get that going, licensing and all that jazz?
Well, I was I'd done some stuff for Metallica. At this point, I started in '88, and it was about, well, I had been with them for about 12 or 14 years, and I was working at a screen print shop when my wife and I were expecting our first child.
Oh,
So our son was born in 2002, and I was working, like I said, I was working at a screen print shop. I was doing uh, color separations and designing for punk bands. I worked for Green Day, AFI, No Use for a Name. Anyway, but when we were going to have this our son, and I was like, I don't want to put him in these little, jumpers that have stupid sayings on them. It's just, that's not me and my wife. We were like, no. So she said, "Well, can you see if you can find black, little jumpers or little toddler tees and things like that from through your work?" And sure enough, I did, and I was able to find these great little black onesies and black uh, little baby hats. And so I bought a few of them, and I guess I bought too many. So because I was
oh,
like, oh. So I was like, wow, I should put, you're up all night because you got to change the kid. You get no sleep as a new parent.
sure.
And so I'd sit up and I'd work on designs, and I started messing around with little baby designs like future headbanger or, never say diaper and things like that. So I came up with a few things, and I was like, I could print some of these up, and I'll just use some of these extra clothes. And I did that. And while I was printing them up, some of the other coworkers were like, "Oh, my cousin would dig that," or something. So I'd
There
hand
it
a
is.
few out, and the next thing I know, like people are asking about it. And I was like, okay, well, they'd see my son and wearing these things at the park. Anyway, so I put it together, and even like I was working for Exodus at the time, and
Nice.
Gary came up with for those about to walk.
There we go. That's
So I
great.
was like, awesome, and I did my day to yell. Anyway, we did. I had fun with it, and then I signed like Exodus and Testament and Death Angel because I grew up with those guys.
Yeah.
So we had Into the Crib and The Art of Crying instead of The Art of
Oh,
Dying because that's when they were
oh, right, right.
and Bonded by Bib. And anyway, I just had fun with it, and and I got I mean, I really did no promotion or anything like that. I just had this website, but I did. Somebody found me, and it was John Hune, who was the producer of a little documentary called Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
Oh, yes.
And he loved it. So we swapped links, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden I was getting, orders, and he sent me a bunch of, tapes and of his stuff, and I sent him some baby clothes. Anyway, it was a friendship that just kind of came from this. And from there, it was like I got there was an article because somebody found out that I worked for Metallica. So
Sure.
there was an article in Playboy magazine, a little
Hey.
blurb. Um, Sharon Osbourne found
Oh.
out about it and invited me out for Ozfest
Oh,
when my
wow.
son was 2. So it just started, and I printed up thousands of these stickers, and I literally left my wife and kid for 2 months to go on the road with Ozfest as a vendor and selling my
Wow.
stuff. And we killed. I mean,
Oh,
people that didn't have kids were coming up and they were buying it because they just thought it was just so bizarre. Zach Wild, he
wow.
had kids, so he was like found out about it. The Cradle of Filth guys loved it,
Wow.
uh, and trying to, I'll swap you this Jesus Christ is a see you in
Mm,
whatever.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's okay. I got a mother-in-law who really wouldn't appreciate, but
Yeah.
feel free, take the clothes,
Yeah.
and it just kind of blossomed for a while, and
Oh,
then
man.
it was fun. I did Ozfest 2 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
It helped us stay afloat because we were living in the Bay Area,
Sure.
and trying to raise a kid. It was tough.
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of shuttered it a while ago because it
Oh,
was a lot of people were coming and doing their own thing. I tried to license people, and they go, "No, thanks. We'll do our own." And
sure.
even the Osbournes did too. So it was
Oh,
like, I mean, and that's I did not invent any wheel or anything like that. I just
sure.
found a little niche, and I was in there for as long as I wanted.
Yeah.
And as soon as it became financially not viable anymore, I just kind of shuttered it. Uh,
Oh, okay.
but then, like I said before, too, you meet people all along the way, and somebody that I had worked with who's big in the merchandising industry uh, said, "Hey, let's revive it, and you don't have to do anything. We'll split the, we'll figure out a royalty rate you're happy with." And I put up a website, and they sell it, and it does pretty good.
Oh,
It
right
doesn't
on.
do like it did when it first came out, but
Sure.
it's still out there, which I still find, you know amazing because yeah, it's all just I just I'm lucky. I'm a lucky person, and I've
Yeah.
been in the presence of a lot of really good people,
Yeah.
and have had some great opportunities. And so yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's but that was the impetus. Was I really didn't want to take my kid out of the house looking like an Easter egg. It, it was
Well, I
like
love it.
yeah, so
That's
little black
cool, though.
onesies with devil horns and all that junk. So
I
and
love
and
it.
my mother-in-law, who like I said was religious, she gave it the thumbs up. So I figured I was because it wasn't obscene. There was a
Sure.
lot of really like I mean just downright things that should not be on a kid's shirt. And
The people suggested.
no, that were out there that I
Oh,
was competing with, and I was like, this is just metal, I mean, metal is still kind of the bad boy or whatever, but it's not vulgar.
sure, sure.
If I had signed Pantera, then maybe it might have had vulgar on
Right,
it, but I
right.
didn't. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, right on. One quick, when did you relocate to Portland, Mark?
it was right at the first, I would say probably 2 months into COVID.
Oh, okay, okay. So you've only really been here about 5 years or so, then, yeah,
Just almost five. Yeah.
yeah,
I had friends that I grew up in the Bay Area that moved up here in the 90s, and they've been trying to get me to come up here
yeah,
uh, for a long time. And I would come up and visit and go to shows and stuff like that. But
yeah.
our youngest has some learning differences,
Okay,
so we were in the Bay Area and we couldn't afford to live there anymore. And it was
right.
like we couldn't afford to even get for our kid. We couldn't find a school that we could afford to or get to even
Oh,
easily to stay in the Bay Area. And I called my friends and they told me about Portland, and that there was a
yeah.
school out here that was great for kids with learning differences. And so we were like, let's sell the house and move up here. And then COVID hit and turned our boat upside down,
Oh,
but we landed on our feet
well, that's
eventually. It
good.
took a while, but through the, the our friends who helped us out, gave us a place to stay, even though everybody was, under this COVID. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so we survived, and you I drive a school bus now, so
Oh, really?
yeah, it's cool. I mean, to make ends meet, it's just, and I come home during the middle of the day and work on Exodus, splatter backdrops and forbidden, skulls and knives, and then I go back out and drive the kids back back home, and
Well,
it's
there you
all
go.
it's all it's all good, and I still find gum under my seat at home.
Oh, well, there you go. And so what can I ask is what age group is this kid's is the school but
This year it's uh, they're 8 to 11.
okay, so no budding metalheads that you've spotted, I'm guessing.
No, and kids these days, I mean, maybe in the high school you see some,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've yet to, and a lot of the teachers, will have like a Metallica shirt or,
Sure.
yeah. So, I mean,
They're
and
kind of a popular group.
we're everywhere. Oh yeah, the Metallica for sure, but metalheads, we're everywhere. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Oh
it,
yeah.
all my friends down in the Bay Area, they go, "Oh man, do you make the kids call you Otto?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of feel like Otto, just less hair."
Yeah, sure.
And they won't let me have the Walkman on when
Oh,
I
right.
drive. So
That's fair. I think that's probably a good rule, you
I
know.
yeah, they want to hear they want us hearing things like when cars are coming and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
all good, man. But yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Well, right on. So I think maybe that's an okay segue to talk about back to your school days
sure.
in the 1980s and your high school and your young adulthood. Uh, like I guess a good place to ask is like, what was it like? What were places like Ruthie's Inn, the Stone, Mabuhay Gardens? What was that like? What were those places?
Um, my perspective was I had never really been outside of the Bay Area. Those venues were
Yeah.
the only venues that I was aware of, except for like the famous places that you see on people's t-shirts, like the Who live at the Marquee.
Oh,
So you
right.
imagine these grand halls and just this epic, where Jimmy Page is having a drink and a smoke with Jeff Beck, and
Oh,
you know,
wow.
that's what you think of. When you
Sure.
see the marquee, you're like, oh my god, the marquee, the Hammersmith Odeon,
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh, and we got Ruthie's in, or we got the Stone, and it
Yeah.
wasn't about the venues as much as it was the bands that would start playing there, and then we'd go
Sure.
see. And the thing about Ruthie's that was great, I mean, it was a dive bar for sure. Like
Yeah.
the bathroom on the bathroom door was ripped off its hinges.
Oof.
Toilets always overflowing.
Oof.
I mean, it was like, yeah, there's a bathroom, but I wouldn't use it,
Oof.
And
Yeah.
especially if you're like a girl, and it's like, don't go
Oh,
in there.
yeah.
But there would be people you had to go anyway, and
Yeah.
they would serve us drinks, and we were like 12, 13, 14 years old,
Gosh.
and
That's
it because
crazy.
it was in the middle of you know you know San Pablo Avenue, a late night club that nobody would look twice at. Um, and back then, it was like, well, if all these kids are coming down here to see this music that nobody wants to see,
Yeah.
at the time, nobody, very few people knew about it. It was like it's party time. We used to say it was feeding
Sure.
time on Monkey Island, and it was like it's those of us who couldn't afford, and there were a lot of us that couldn't afford a drink at a bar, were
Sure.
across the street at the Big O parking lot.
Oh man, Big O
I,
tires, right?
tap somebody on the shoulder. Yeah, exactly. Tap somebody on the shoulder to get you a 12 pack of Schaefer or Bergie or
Oh wow.
whatever you could find. I mean, it was like it was quantity, not quality, for sure.
Oh yeah.
At least for us, and we just get hammered in the parking lot.
Oh
And if
my
we had
God.
enough money to buy a ticket in, or have a ticket, most of the time it was, middle of the week. You'd
Sure.
see a band for $3. And it would be like three or four bands, and
Wow.
really not anybody too much of note. But then, this was when like Legacy was pretty small, and they were, playing middle bill to like a lot of punk bands. They'd play
Sure.
with Attitude Adjustment, and
Oh
Fang,
wow.
and Verbal Abuse. So I mean, that cross pollination of punk and metal was, I mean, in the Bay Area, it literally, I would call it almost a like they took a nod from Bill Graham, who used to
Yeah.
put the Day on the Greens together, where
Yes.
you'd have like Journey headlining over Black Sabbath, over Molly Hatchet, over
Wow.
you know Shakin' Street or the Rockets or so.
Oh
Anyway,
man.
it was like he knew that getting a bunch of different genres together, you're going to have 4, 5 times the amount of fans showing up.
Sure.
So the
Bi-
punks and the metalheads played together, and yeah, all the punks that knew, they either knew both or they only knew the punk bands, and they'd show up and support you, and that's how we all became friends. So it was like these little shows for $3 because no one had ever heard of anybody outside of our circle, where all of a sudden filling up this place. And if Wes Robinson could sell, half of them drinks, then he's loving it.
Sure.
And like, hey, we sold enough tickets to make you guys welcome back.
Well,
And
okay.
I think the popularity of the bands were almost more of the fact that it was popular to hang out at these venues that you were talking about. The
Oh, okay.
Mabuhay Stone was a little kind of higher up on the food chain.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, the way that the Ruthie's Inn was always cheap, at least at the very beginning, it was very cheap.
Yeah.
Almost anybody could play there as long as you, soul, you tried to do the best you can, and you put together a band list of different bands that you play with. and we figured it out that try to make as much money as you possibly can, but it wasn't really. It was just get in front of many as people as you possibly could, really,
Right on.
as these
Right on.
bands are coming up.
Yeah.
So anyway, there it was. That was your Ruthie's Inn. Mabuhay Gardens was more established as long along with the Stone,
Oh,
where they
okay.
kind of they had enough pull to bring in national touring acts, not your stadium guys, but
Yeah.
we had local guys like Y&T,
Yeah.
which were one of the most underrated bands, unfortunately,
They're a
of all.
great rock band. They really
Oh,
are.
and just yeah, I mean they bridged that gap until it was like uh, they became obscure because of it. I think because
Yeah.
they didn't. They were already the core. I mean, they
Yeah.
were heavy enough for the heavy guys, and they were melodic enough for your standard stadium rock guys, and they
Yeah.
fit the middle bill. But then in the '90s, when I think it was kind of like choose your ground,
Yeah.
we couldn't really do it, and then it was like there was a clear line of
Yeah.
demarcation, and they fell through that crack.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. But that was a great band. Y&T.
fantastic band, and you
Oh
could
yeah.
see them at the Stone, and you would see them on a Friday night or a Saturday night, so they were top billing. It was a more pricier ticket, but you
Sure.
knew what you were getting when you go see that band. With the other smaller bands that would fill up the slots either as an opening if they were lucky.
Yeah.
That's where Law's Rocket kind of came into play because Law's
Nice.
Rocket had established themselves through promotion, but also
Yeah.
being able to kind of get these draws that they became like if they were headlining, they could pick and choose who they were going to have open, but
Nice.
they would always predominantly get the opening slots on some of these heavier shows coming through town. Like I saw Loudness, and they came
Oh
and
man.
supported them. Um, so I mean, it was like that where the bigger venues commanded a little bit more money. Some of those venues, especially on the weekends, I believe for a lot it was 18 and over,
Oh.
uh, and a clear line of demarcation for the bar. So,
Oh, right.
and being younger, there were some shows you could go to, and some you couldn't. And in the city, it was like that as well. Not to mention, it was also difficult for a 13-year-old to be able to find somebody in her peer group that would drive,
Yeah.
that
I
was
mean,
old enough to drive,
right.
or legally. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
so
mean,
you might get pulled over on the way over, and it's a bunch of kids. Oh, we're just
yeah.
gonna go see Metallica.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, I remember that. I remember the frustration of looking through the music papers as a teenager, but I'm like 14 or 15. I'm like, I had to miss seeing Black Sabbath with Tony Martin in 1995. I had to miss seeing Maiden with Blaze Bayley in 96.
Yeah.
I never got to see Dio because these were all 21 and over gigs
Oh man,
or their shows where it's like um
beyond your reach to
beyond
get.
your reach. Like I'm at 14, I can't get to go to the Salem Armory.
Yes.
That's an hour away.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen. But yeah, so I
Same
can
with
under
us. Same with us. I mean,
yeah.
these small clubs that were the birthplace of some of these bands that we're talking about that have risen to this level
Oh yeah,
were like, a lot of times you couldn't even. There's no way I could get out there, or if sometimes you could, and
sure.
and we were talking a little bit about like people like. Well, I don't want to lead it in. I'll let you ask about it, but there were older kids that would be the the one who could facilitate driving a certain amount
Oh,
of it. Like
okay.
we couldn't get out to the Cow Palace
Oh,
easily.
sure.
We'd all pile into the back of someone's pickup truck.
Sure.
So I mean, there was I'm sure that's universal with all the scenes like that. But
Yeah,
those
I would say
clubs
so.
were they
Yeah.
were kind of I mean they were great, and
Yeah.
And the other part of it too, like I was kind of intimating before, was just the melding between punk and metal.
Yeah.
Also, kind of broke down some of those, barriers as far as the venues, because
Oh,
the Stone was pretty, rigid, more mainstream,
okay.
because they would have national acts. So punk and metal, which were these, small splintered. I mean, if you're Sex Pistols, yeah, you're going to be playing
Sure.
Winterland or something
Yeah.
like that. But if you're Verbal Abuse or whatever,
Forget it, right?
you're not gonna. It's going to be places like the Farm or the Fab Mab, which will live
Sure.
the Rock on Broadway, which was
Oh,
right
right.
next door to the Mab and across the street from the Stone.
Okay.
So, and there was a plethora of these venues.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of got catered to, but it
Nice.
depended on where you were in the pecking order. And
Okay.
Ruthie's Inn was the spawning ground for a lot of these bands that were
Yeah.
just starting out,
Yeah.
but getting some exposure.
Yeah.
And I think that Bay Area allegiance, bigger bands that had started in the Bay Area but started getting bigger, stayed playing at Ruthie's because the scene hadn't blown up to where they were at. Like I remember when Testament first went to Europe,
Oh, okay.
and when Alex Skolnick got back, I think it was Alex or Eric, one of them were telling me that the European crowds, I mean, they couldn't sell out the Ruthie's Inn for a while. They couldn't. I mean, it'd be like 30 or 40 of us, which
Okay.
is a good size crowd back then.
Sure. Sure.
But they're playing in festivals in Europe, and they're like, Alex said, it was the scariest thing that he ever seen. There's these huge German guys with Testament tattooed across their chests, and they're grabbing their little, caravan that is their dressing room out in the field, and they're rocking it just like going, "We love you guys," I mean, it's just like
Whoa.
said, it was like he was dreaming. It was just like so bizarre to be like not
Wow.
recognized and having to take the bus to go to school, to like being, treated like a god out in these fields in
Wow.
Germany. And he goes, "You gotta," he would encourage me to go out to Europe or something. And I was like, well, yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. But
But
that's incredible, you know.
oh yeah, yeah,
You
those kind
know.
of things. And we were, I mean, literally, I think that's also the other thing that was really cool about growing up then. It was like there was such a pool of talent, um, that everybody was just so happy for anybody that could get to this thing. And it was like it wasn't just like one person. It was like there was these groups of people that all of a sudden found themselves like their destiny was flipping burgers at,
Sure.
at a stand, or working in a record store or whatnot.
Sure.
And then they were doing that, and then the next
Yeah.
thing they know, they're playing on a stage, and they're I just got all my change, and I'm calling you from Czechoslovakia. You won't believe what's going on out here, and you're just watching what you thought was your tiny little world is really the entire world. And
And that's
man,
got to be incredible. Like our band that I see for $5, play to 50 people in town is playing to thousands of people, and people are going nuts for them in Europe. Like that's,
yeah,
I don't know what.
it was unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
for us, it was unbelievable. And I think like Metallica, when they I was a little late to the game. I didn't see them until kind of mid to late '83.
Oh,
They
okay.
were they had come up several times, but again, they were playing in the city, and it was hard for me to get out to. And a friend of mine, told me about them and gave me the No Life Till Leather tape,
Yeah. Great
and
tape.
it was just, and it was awesome. And it so people were aware of it, but I finally got to see them. They played the Keystone Berkeley with
Oh,
Raven on the Kill 'Em All for One tour,
oh, wow.
and which was like I was excited about going to see the show because I had heard this tape and I had heard all my friends who had seen them, like they
Yeah.
played at the Stone and a couple other places, and they were just raving about them. But to see it, it was this experience of like I felt like I was equating it to like people that stumbled upon the Cavern Club one
Mhm.
night and seeing the Beatles. You know, there was something palpable
I
that
I
you're
I
like,
I think
there
that's
is
a
no way that these guys are not going to be just the best band in the world. You know, I mean, it was just
yeah,
you could it was surreal. It was so palpable. You're sitting there
yeah,
watching this, and we had seen some great bands. Don't I mean,
sure.
uh, but they had something that was like it was indescribable. You know, it was just
Man.
like it was just the energy, the just the presence. I mean, it was so in your face, and then as soon as you were just like so caught up in it, it was
Yeah.
over, and you're just like stunned. And it wasn't that it was
Wow.
short; it was just that I mean, people have asked me about the show, and I go, you know, I remember just being so completely blown away that I can't. I mean, I remember a few of the songs that they played, but it was
Sure.
that this it was like opening up a door and having like
Yeah.
a jet engine just blow you in the
Yeah.
face
Yeah.
for like 45 minutes to an hour, and
Oh
then
man.
it's shutting it and you're just like, did that just happen, you know? And it
Man.
was so it was
So I
phenomenal.
That's amazing, Mark. How is I have to ask, how was it? Was Raven able to follow them like well, or was it just kind of anticlimactic?
I don't even, to be honest, I don't even remember because I know they would switch from
Oh, okay.
headliner.
Okay.
I believe that night the Metallica headline, but
Okay.
I will just say, and again, this is everybody has, I'm sure, a different impression. My perspective was I wouldn't have known that Raven had played that night simply because they are nowhere.
Right.
There's nothing that could. It was that intense that
Sure.
my memories are just being like it's just like I mean like my body was moving. I'm doing it now. It's like
Yeah. Oh,
leaning
yeah.
forward like this is amazing. This was so incredible. Um, so
That's
whether they
okay.
played or not, whether they were great or not, I gotta ask somebody else because I can't recall. And
That's okay.
they were kind of evenly matched, so to speak.
Sure. I mean, it's
And
83 Ravens at the height of their powers. I mean,
yeah, pretty
they're
much.
coming
I
off
mean,
All for One, which is probably their first three records are mwah,
yeah, yeah.
So well, right on. That's
And they
cool.
had been with Megaforce for a while, so it was like,
Yeah.
and the Anthrax and those guys. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that to come out of the box with that much emphasis, you know, oomph. I
Yeah.
mean, Raven had done three, and maybe they were good, great
Oh
records,
yeah.
but not. There's you could tell that compared to this new band that is just were on the scene
Oh yeah.
dominate. I mean, dominate. It was like, yeah,
Yeah.
and there were very few bands that there was a rivalry between Exodus and Metallica because
Sure. Yeah.
a couple
Um,
of times, Exodus were a hard band to follow, and
sure. I mean, Exodus rules, you
yeah,
know.
and who took that crown was Slayer. So eventually it was like nobody could play. You didn't want to play before, and you definitely didn't want to play after Slayer.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like there's not going to be there crickets in the
Oh
venue,
man.
but
So, oh, go ahead.
and anyway, so the Exodus were kind of that local. We knew that okay, Metallica come in, they dominate. That's awesome. We still have Exodus. Exodus is in the pocket. They're coming up. It is
Oh yeah.
and unfortunately, they were the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
Yeah.
We just got a series of bad luck. But
Yeah.
if bonded at blood by bonded, if you want to play hypothesis and what if bonded by blood had come out when it was supposed to, which would have been about the same time as Kill 'Em All,
Yeah.
we might be looking at the big four in a whole different
Yeah.
light.
Uh,
And it,
I think about that all the time. I think Exodus is like they had the chops, they had the songs, but it's kind of like it's the sometimes it's just about the focus or the work ethic. And it's kind of like if you're partying too hard and not focusing on the business,
yeah.
I think we can kind of like all of them, but I think especially Bailoff.
Oop,
Oh,
sorry, he froze there for a second.
oh, sorry, did I?
Now you're back.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I think it's kind of a case of like I think it's a band that maybe partied a little too hard, especially
Yeah, we're
Paul.
having a little delay there.
Mm, okay, well, what? I don't know what to do to make up for that. Um,
Yeah.
oh dear.
You want to start it again? We could just start talking about it again. Just can you edit it out?
Uh, no, but that's fine.
That's fine. Hey,
But
rock
if
and roll ain't pretty.
rock
Yeah.
and well, neither is comedy.
And I'm proof positive. Rock and roll ain't pretty, baby.
Oh, uh,
But anyway,
but
so
yeah,
yeah, they partied. Yeah, they were partiers, but it it it, I don't think that they had the management.
yeah, there's that too. You have to have the right people behind you. Um, but ooh. Mark, I
Yeah,
wonder if we might split this into a two-parter because of we're having some delay issues. Do you feel okay with that?
totally fine with that.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna so hey folks watching, this is the end of part one, but stick around, there's more to come with Mark, Devito, and Posers Must Die. Thank you.